Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arseholics podcast on a Sunday night, doing things a little bit differently this time. We're actually going live 10 minutes earlier than scheduled. If you can see us on screen, I'm donning the normal Arsenal home kit. Aaron has gone retro. Myers is dressed like a wasp. It's all a bit. It's a bit random here today.
I didn't get the memo clearly about the red and white, so yeah, I'll stand out tonight.
Love it. It's been an entertaining day anyway. I think we've got a lot to talk about with regards to just that crazy game at the Emirates on Friday night. But there's a crazy game at St James's Park today, particularly crazy 20 minutes. So I had early today, Aaron, and I think you were in that same chat group, a couple of Spurs fans. Well, actually, it was one Spurs fan, but the story's better if I say a couple of Spurs fans, like trying to give it large about Arsenal potentially bottling a title race, trying to give the banter prior to them kicking off against Newcastle. It's a golden rule, right? You never banter off other teams before your team has played. I mean, Miles, you even did that the other day. That was very clever. You didn't banter off United fans because you were like, just in case we do something on Friday.
Even though it was Southampton at home, I still had a bit of nervousness.
You still know, do you know what I mean? Because it's just
I didn't send anything. I sent it all in our group, ready to send on Friday night, 10 o'clock. But yeah, didn't in the end, obviously, but yeah, exactly.
Because you're a sensible guy.
Saved and everything.
Yeah,
exactly.
But why would you expose yourself to that, right? So these Spurs fans giving me jib this morning, and now look, 5-0 down. They were after 20 minutes. I just watched. So I didn't watch it live. I saw it at half time. I saw the score. I just watched the first 20 minutes. That's all. You guys watch it? I mean, Spurs were like, they were bad. Have you guys seen it? Did you watch it?
No, but I was just really sad that I wasn't watching that live. I've never had so much regret at missing 20 minutes of a football game than I did when I tuned in on 23 minutes. Because I think, Miles, you messaged and you were like, I just saw the score. And I was like, what's happened here? Are they winning? Are they losing 1-0? Did they concede in the last minute? Because I had no, mental, I wasn't really aware. I was trying to ignore football most of this weekend after what happened on Friday. And then I just put I opened my score app. I just burst out laughing. And then I put it on, and then I was quite disappointed because I don't think they scored between then and the second until half time, which was a crying shame, because I was like, this could be a 15-0 at this rate. But no, unfortunately, I would have. I'm just so sad I missed it live, because can you imagine just watching every goal go in? I mean, even the third or the fourth, and then the fifth, it would have been really, really funny to watch live. And I think even
imagine if you had some Spurs fans with you as well. How good would that have been?
Oh man, I mean, even that fifth goal, when I think it was it Isaac that scored the fifth goal, and even he looked a bit embarrassed. He was just like, "This is should we stop? Should we just give up and let them score a few for fun now? What do we do?" What a mess of a team they are. It's so enjoyable.
It's enjoyable. Sorry, mate. I was just going to say it's enjoyable, but at the same time, it's quite. I don't know. I didn't watch any of it. I like you said, Aaron, and I just saw the score alert on my phone when I checked my phone and couldn't believe the score after 10 minutes or whatever. But as enjoyable as it is, because it's always enjoyable, it's still quite hard to enjoy with what happened to us on Friday. Do you know what I mean? The fact that we said it after Friday night, that kind of ruined our weekend. I guess it helps a little bit, but it softens the blow. But yeah, but I guess the other annoying thing is we've got Newcastle in a couple of weeks.
I know.
At St James's Park, so it's a little bit worrying to think that they're able to do that to a decent Tottenham team, and we've got that fixture to contend with.
That's the annoying thing about our situation, though, isn't it? We aren't getting to enjoy pretty much anything else that's going on because we're so nervous about our own plight over the next kind of few weeks. Because I thought exactly that same thing, Miles. Crap, we've got to go to Newcastle soon.
They're on fire. They're forwards wise, they seem to be kind of. I mean, I don't keep track on who they start every week, apart from an FPL perspective. But Isaac's come back into the team and he's scoring goals, and plays like Jacob Murphy are scoring goals. So it feels like they're getting goals from all across the team, and a little bit concerning given the number of goals we're conceding at the moment as well. So
it probably segues nicely into our game, right? Because if we started the way that we started against Southampton, against Newcastle at St James's, well, it very well could be 5-0 after 20 minutes, couldn't it?
Well, I hope
that's
not.
Not that's a rhetorical question. Excellent. Yeah, no, but let's
you're
let's
going
talk about that a little bit.
straight in, aren't you, mate?
yeah. Let's go straight in. I mean, like, look, we got to our seats, and I think the first thing that we saw as we kind of, took poise, was the ball hitting the back of our net. What were Aaron? What was your thoughts when you saw that goal go in?
Yeah, honestly, I forgot that it was so early on now. We must have been getting into our seats a bit later. Like, we obviously missed kickoff, but then we got in, and literally, I don't think I was actually in my seat. It was like walking down the row, and the goal went in, and I was like, "What the hell?" Yeah, I think honestly, when we went 1-0 down, it didn't bother me too much. It was a bit like when we went 1-0 down to Bournemouth so quickly. I was like, "Look, this is a team that's bottom of the league. It's okay. Like, this isn't fatal. This isn't gonna cause us that many issues. We're gonna be fine." Turns out we weren't fine, and we weren't gonna be fine. But no, it's one of those where if you look at this result and actually that goal in isolation, it's like, okay, it's an early goal. We weren't paying attention what's going on. But actually, if you look at it in the context of the number of goals we've conceded, that early goal against Bournemouth, the trend of, I think we've kept like 3 clean sheets in the last 15 games or something like that. It is a bit of a concern how we're defending. Now, the easy kind of person to blame there is Holding, but I think even before, when Saliba was in the team, we weren't, since the World Cup, we haven't been defending that well, and that is a concern. And look, I think if you are going to be challenging for a title, I think we were joking at the end of the last podcast where we said, look, if you're going to be challenging, if we don't beat Southampton, we don't deserve to be in the title race. And maybe that's a bit extreme, but we can't defend the way we defend and expect to be okay in this title race. And that's, we can dig deeper into why that is and what it is. But when you concede 3 goals at home to Southampton, you're like, that's just not good enough, really, is it?
It's terrible. And 3 different goals, very different types of goals, Miles, right? So if we talk about those types, because the first is Ramsdale's. Yeah, that's just 100% Ramsdale's error. Do you read much into that, given his season? Or because what you could argue is, I thought back to when we played Newcastle last season, Newcastle away, that real pressure game, that real kind of, we really had to get a result. And I remember him being particularly nervous that day against Newcastle. And I kind of started thinking, I was like, maybe he is someone who just who has the kind of potential, I guess, to let some of that nerves overwhelm him, which is sort of contrary to the character that he is sometimes. I feel like he's exceptionally good, particularly away from home, at dealing with, the away fans, etc. But maybe actually, if you forget that, maybe he's fantastic at that bit of it. But the actual pressure, say if it's an actual pressure situation, do you have any concerns over him?
I think it'd be harsh to criticize him too much, given how solid, how good he's been for us this season. He's got us out of a number of holes, sorry. And he's obviously instrumental to the way that we build out from the back and the way that we play out, basically, and all of our attacks, start from him. And I think that's just part of it, mate. Like, I personally just put it down to, like, you can't legislate for that happening really at any point in the game, but especially when you're, we've just kicked off, they've just kicked off. But I put it down to nerves, and I think I put it down to just, I don't know, like maybe just a slight moment or lapse of concentration, probably a combination of nerves and just not really switching on from kickoff or from minute 1. But when you think about how good Ramsdale's been like, especially with his feet, right? We all know, like, as a shot stopper or just generally as a goalkeeper, I think he's just improved so much since he's been our number one. And especially as a shot stopper and kind of getting us out of holes. Like I said, Anfield was a great example, that those last 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever, at Anfield, he was the reason that we managed to get a point, basically. But yeah, I think given how good he's been with his feet up until now, I think you can kind of allow him that mistake. I don't think it's really acceptable in terms of like if we want to win the league and what our ambitions are this season. Because yeah, it's Southampton at home at the end of the day. It just shouldn't be happening in any game, but especially in a game where I don't want to say pressure's off as such, but it's a game that we're expected to win, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's just one of those moments, unfortunately. And I think you could tell as well by his reaction. Like, he knew straight away, and he was apologizing to the fans. He had his hands up at halftime when he was going to get his like water and stuff from near where we sit. You could tell he knew straight away. And I think also like the way that he plays, the way that he's being asked to play from the back is very much, it's obviously, he obviously has to play safe in the sense you can't just play risky passes, but we've been lauding him for how good he is with his feet and how good his passing is. So you look at it now in hindsight and you say, well, it was such a risky pass. And he had other options. He could have played to either centre back. He could have played it out to Ben White. I think all three were clear, like were open and unmarked. So he could have just gone for the easy option. He's obviously gone for the more risky one, but hoping to cut through the middle of the pitch, and then it opens up. I think he's trying to pass to Thomas Partey? I can't remember who it was.
It's Zinchenko.
Zinchenko, yeah. So he's obviously trying to pass to another ball player who can then just take, basically build an attack from there. But that's what we've been doing all season. So like, I wouldn't personally, I'm not like I can't like, I feel it'll be unfair to go really, really hard on him. But I think his standards, like, I think he's a player where he's got very, very high standards. And I think he would obviously expect more of himself. So, but it's just one of those, man. It happens sometimes. And, De Gea has been doing it a lot recently. I'm not sort of comparing the two goalkeepers, but it just, it does happen. You see it happen with Ederson, with Alisson, the keepers that play, teams that play like that, they do often, give the ball away because they're not just hoofing it up the pitch, So
you don't think it was anything to do with nerves in particular? So you think this is just a byproduct of, as you say, you're completely right.
No, I do think
Alisson, etc. do it.
I do think it was down to nerves because it happens. Like, we were walking, I don't know if you guys remember, but when we were walking up to the turnstile, I said, like, we're just talking about, the game and everything. And I remember saying to you guys, I don't know if you guys remember, I said, like, the one thing that needs to happen, given how awful we've been at the back the last few games, is we can't start the game like we started against like we started against Bournemouth. We can't start the game like how I think it was against Leeds, where Leeds almost scored from kickoff, right? We've got to be just on it and focused and not like shoot ourselves in the foot. And that's exactly what we did. So I think I do put it down to nerves. And I do put it down to nerves given that everything was so relaxed at the start of the season. There was no pressure on us. There wasn't really any pressure on us because no one was giving us a chance for top 4 at the start of the season. So I think, it was, we could do our thing and, just quietly go about getting our wins. And that's what we did. It was all quite jovial, right? And not jovial, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean? And now it's like, right, City are right on us. We've dropped points in the last 2 games where we've had very good leads, and really, especially the West Ham one, we shouldn't have, obviously. And yeah, maybe it was just maybe it was just nerves. But I think, like, law of averages, if you're going to have a keeper that does, and we have a system that involves us playing out from the back and not just hitting it long, that's going to happen at some point. It's just really annoying that it happened when it did, obviously, and they punished us for that mistake as well.
I do.
Yeah,
have to say one thing quickly, which is,
go for it.
I don't want to be that guy who's going in on Holding, but you watch the replay of that goal. Holding is pointing, telling Ramsdale to play that pass, and he's pointing at Zinchenko, and he's basically saying, "Pass it that way." And like you said, Miles, I think you said Gabriel was open, Holding was open, and Ben White, I assume, like you said, was probably open as well, right? And I think it's these little things that, on the biggest occasions, when you're talking about the finest of margins, do actually make a difference. Like this goal was Ramsdale's fault, right? Regardless of where Holding is pointing to, Ramsdale should not be playing that pass. Or if he's going to play that pass, he has to get it right. And he doesn't do either of those things. But you put Saliba in there, either he is going to make himself available, and Ramsdale probably has a little bit more confidence to play that pass to Saliba. But is Saliba telling Ramsdale to play that pass? Like, we'll never know. But when you're at this level and the finest of margins, when the team is under pressure, you need... I think Holding probably just lacked a bit of quality there. And it's just like it's something I'm pointing at. I'm not saying like Holding's at fault there, but it's like all these little things add up. So is it like a concentration thing? Is it a mentality, like a pressure thing? Or is it just, first minute, like shouldn't a Ramsdale in another year's time, Ramsdale another 2 years' time, when he's been more used to playing in a title race, does he look at Holding and say like, no, shut up, I'm not going to play that pass. It's the first minute of the game. I'm going to remember this situation from 2 years ago, and I'm just going to play the simple pass because I know what happens if you get this wrong in the first minute. It's fine margins, isn't it?
It is, and Russ sort of, I guess, echoing some of this in the comments around the concentration of our players, and you don't see Man City conceding goals in the first minute. I mean, it's very true. And it's very hard actually to reconcile in some ways, right? Because we were also the team that scored the most goals in the first 15 minutes of matches. We've scored the most goals in the first 15 minutes of games this season. So that doesn't reconcile with this kind of concentration and focus point. Like, clearly, generally speaking, you imagine, based on how we score goals, they do whatever, they say whatever's said in the dressing room in such a way in which they come out and they are going, we're going to bloody start this game like a house on fire. But, and I wonder if it is that they are too ambitious, that they are perhaps not focusing on being compact necessarily defensively at the beginning. I'm not sure. But just pulling on the Holding thread of the, not wanting to be that guy or whatever. And it's quite interesting, actually, because it's very similar with the second goal, where on the second goal, on the face of it, it's very clear. It looks very clearly a Gabriel mistake. Yeah. It looks very clearly that Gabriel sort of lost his man, and, really he should have been more aware of where Walcott was. Walcott does a very, very very standard Walcott run and makes a good finish. When you look at the replays and you look at the angles, Rob Holding is playing incredibly deep. He's a lot deeper than Gabriel. And hypothetically, you could say in a situation where you've got Saliba probably plays a similar line to Gabriel. He's probably higher up the pitch, in which case they probably play offside. And, they have confidence to do that because they think they got recovery pace. But in this situation, this wasn't the case. The centre backs are so far apart and Holding is a lot deeper. So again, this is one of those, it might not be his fault. It's probably harsh to call him out about it, but it is frustrating because it does again show a little bit of a lack of understanding between Holding and the rest of his players around him. I mean, Miles, would you agree with that assessment with regards to the second goal, or do you think that it's just bread and butter? Gabriel needs to do better.
I think initially when I first saw it, obviously we're in the ground, don't get to see many replays. I was pretty critical of Gabriel because it feels like he just doesn't sense and see Walcott's run. And he just allows Walcott to kind of, make that run in behind, and the ball's perfect, to be fair. But having watched a few replays and some of the analysis, I think it's a fantastic run from Walcott and it's a fantastic ball. So from a Southampton perspective, attacking perspective, they've executed it perfectly. And I think the Rob Holding thing, I didn't see it on the night, to be fair. And I think you're completely right. You've illustrated it really well, where he just doesn't. It's a bit of a weird one where he's, a few yards deeper than the rest of the defense. Is that down to kind of him not playing in this team all season up until, Saliba getting injured, and now he's being thrown in and he's just not used to, he's not familiar with the system, as it were? Or is it just he's not switched on, again, similar to Ramsdale, and he's just not getting out fast enough? But obviously affects us because, if he's a few yards further up, whoever the Southampton player is that gets the ball, he can then at least go and engage him and try and win the ball back or hold him up, whatever it is, do something. But he's too far off it. So the Southampton guy that gets the ball. He's got all the time in the world to pick that pass. So, yeah, I think critical of him in that scenario. I can't remember. Do we lose the ball? Do we lose the ball for them to get that attack going? I can't remember.
I think we did. I think we did.
Partey loses.
I think Partey gives it away just on the right hand side somewhere.
And this is another thing, and I think again, I'm trying to think back because I can't actually remember. But if that is the case, that's not the first time that's obviously happened in the last few games. And again, is that down to nerves? Because we know how good Thomas Partey's been this season, but and I know that's the way he plays, right? He's not again. It's almost like what he did against Declan Rice in the West Ham game. It's a risky strategy or risky move, but he's been pulling that off all season. Flicking it past a midfielder, and then it he breaks into space and he can drive forward. But yeah, it just feels like sloppy all around, to be honest. And I feel it's a little bit harsh to just pin it all on Rob Holding, but he definitely contributes to them having so much time and space to pick out that pass. And to be fair, it's a fantastic run from Walcott. Like I remember seeing we remember seeing
it's vintage, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And annoyingly, you don't know what you're going to get with Walcott. Like I know he scored loads of goals for us, and a lot of them from that kind of coming off the right and side footing it into the far corner. And he did that loads for us, but at the same time he missed loads of chances like that. And I was just hoping he'd balloon it or something. But yeah, he was on it, and yeah, it's just, I mean, I think there was a few defensive errors there.
Yeah, the thing about the Holding situation is more like I think this team can accommodate maybe one thing or one person going wrong, right? But because you look at like that situation where Partey gives the ball away, let's say we had our best team, everyone playing really well. What usually happens if Partey gives the ball away, which he has done in the past, like you said, Mize, what would normally happen is Saliba would, in that situation, probably be higher up the pitch, or at least back himself to get to the man. And then I think it was his name, Alcaraz, or is that his name?
Yeah.
Alcaraz probably doesn't make the pass, or Saliba gets to him. If Alcaraz makes the pass, Gabriel is probably holding a similar line because they both play a high line, and the Walcott's probably offside. Or very worst case, Ramsdale will pull off a really good save. But actually, what happens is all of those things go wrong at the same time. Partey's giving the ball away. Holding's not in the right place. Gabriel is a lot deeper and loses his man. And then Ramsdale probably should save that, but doesn't. And it's like you take one little thing out of this perfectly balanced team, and then the whole thing crumbles a bit. But then you have a few things going wrong. Like against Southampton, we had Holding, but then we also had Xhaka missing. Against West Ham, we had Holding, but then we also had Zinchenko missing. I think this team only has tolerance. And then you throw on top of that players playing slightly worse under pressure. You have like one little thing causes a few other things to drop off, and it
isn't that more of a recent thing, Aaron? Because isn't that more recent though? Because it does feel like I know we've been overall okay injuries wise throughout the season. We've had our fair share of injuries, but it's not been like an injury plagued season necessarily. But we've generally coped well. Like it felt like
with on one in the season, I think we can cope well. I think this team has 10, right? But the minute you go down to 9, I think that's too much for this team. And top of that, you've got pressure and players playing badly as well. Like when we were running with Eddie, I think we consistently were playing a back four. Thomas Partey was usually fit, I think, around that time. When Partey was out, I can't remember who was playing in that position. But then I guess Elneny was around at that point. And then who played when Partey was out injured at the start of the season?
At the start of the season.
Jorginho wasn't there, was he?
No, at the start of the season it wasn't. It was.
Partey did not get injured?
I don't think he was injured at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't. But yeah, I guess my point is like the team and the squad depth isn't there where like it can hold more than one. Like Trossard's a bit different because I think he is up there with a player who's good enough to be in the first team. But then the drop off when you got guys like Vieira, Eddie, Holding, Tierney, there's still like quite a big drop off.
Do you not think that's enough? Okay, I mean, you named a few players there, but talking about Friday specifically, 2 players out, and we know Saliba to Holding, we know what the drop off is. I guess the Xhaka one was a bit unexpected, but even so, do you not still think that's just enough? Like it's enough from a player's perspective or from a quality level perspective. Those 11 players plus the players on the bench are still miles better on paper than Southampton's team. Like those I don't know. I think a lot of it was just down to pressure and nerves and knowing what's happened in the last couple of games. And you've always got now, you know, I guess when you get to the run-in phase, you know that you're basically looking over your shoulder. Like we've been looking over our shoulder all season, but probably not expecting ourselves to be in the position that we found ourselves in with 10 games to go. Maybe they did, I don't know. But then it's like City just have started, you know, just as we've been on a good run, they've been on a fantastic run as well. So they just keep winning. And the gap was gradually closing. And I feel like now the gap got down to 4 points before the game on Friday. I really think it was just like pressure of never being in this position before. And I just think, like, I think if you'd have played this game, Arsenal Southampton earlier in the season, and you put Holding and Vieira in the team, we win the game.
I think you'd be naive to say pressure's zero of a factor. I still think you put Holding and Vieira. You start Holding and Vieira for the first 10 games of the season. I don't think we're top of the league.
Maybe I think that's true because that would suggest if we were, then that would suggest that people like Odegaard and Saliba didn't make huge impacts in that period, which they did. I mean, everyone was talking about Saliba for the first 10 games. He was pretty much the most talked about player in the Premier League because he was that good. So I agree on that basis.
Maybe not top. Well. Maybe not top of the league, but I still think our results would be like. I don't think our results would be affected massively. Like if we're playing a Man United or a Liverpool in that period, then maybe the results go a little bit differently. But I think we'd still be able to comfortably beat some of the poorer teams in the league, even when you take
the poorer teams.
I disagree. I think not with the way. I think the problem is we're trying to play.
Well, we did though, right? Because we had Saliba's been out for a while. He's been out since the Lisbon game. We still beat, I think, Palace and Leeds without him. Like, so comfortable.
Yeah, fine. Okay, yeah. I mean, fine. I just think when you like over the course of 90 minutes, you can say like there's enough variance in it to say like, it can go either way. And we've got, like you said, good players to say most of the time we probably win. But I think honestly, when you play Holding, you can't play the football we're playing now, the football and the system, the tactics we're playing now, whilst having Holding in. And I think there's a debate to be had to say if we felt we had no alternative but to play Holding, maybe we can discuss this in a minute. Say, did we have an alternative? But if we have that, should we play a different system? Because this system, in my opinion, sets up Rob Holding for failure. And I think. Yeah, and I do think honestly, if we played the first 10 games of the season with Holding and Vieira or Holding and Tierney, I think we probably lose 3 of those games, because I don't rate Holding as a defender. I don't rate him definitely don't rate him going forward and causing build-up play. And then Vieira as well. Like we should probably have a conversation on Vieira as well.
I was going to say, like we can obviously we obviously can't. We spent about half an hour. We haven't got very far in the game itself, but so I'm not sure we can dissect the game. But let's talk about maybe some of those big macro things before we move on to the City previewing City. So one of those is Vieira. So and maybe it's worth evaluating it in the Vieira versus Smith Rowe lens, because look, the point is, Granit Xhaka got injured. Unexpected, but whatever. I was in the same boat as Mize. It's Southampton at home on a Friday night. Who cares? Fabio Vieira, Emile Smith Rowe, either of them. Who else could you want to play at home against the bottom team of the bloody league? Like, here's your time to shine. Brilliant. In fact, I would argue that there was an argument to say maybe it's a good game for Xhaka to not have played anyway and got one of those guys to play and got them into form or whatever. So whatever. Fabio Vieira steps up. Smith Rowe doesn't. So that decision itself is it was an interesting one. And Vieira was, well, I think we all agree because we were extensively talking about it in the Chinese restaurant following the game. He was just piss poor, terrible, awful, offered nothing, passenger. I don't know what other words. Mize, give me some of the words.
Oh, mate, he was awful, wasn't he? He was absolutely terrible. Just anonymous is probably the best word I can use to describe it. His performance. Yeah, like I was so disappointed with him. Basically, that for the period that he was on the pitch, I was like, first half we were sitting behind Ramsdale, so obviously the end that Arsenal were defending, and we know, like Aaron has just alluded to, right, holding on the ball is very limited, and I kind of feel like when you watch us play with a full strength team and Xhaka's in central midfield, I know he's playing further forward, but let's just say in midfield, when we have the ball in defence, Xhaka will offer himself and open himself up for a passing option. Even if he doesn't get the ball, it means that it's creating space in behind, like, further forward, and it's he's basically offering himself as a passing option. And the number of times that Holding and Gabriel had the ball and Vieira was just hovering in that same kind of like number 8, in that 8 position, basically just not getting himself involved in the play at all, just not dropping in. We're 2-0 down in the first half. He should be the one of the players saying, "Give me the ball. I'm going to make something happen." And he didn't do it at all. And I was getting so pissed off, so frustrated because, he's got his chance. He's probably been sitting on the sidelines the entire season, watching us do so well, new signing, and he's been probably itching to impress. You'd like to think that's his attitude anyway. And he finally gets his chance in a huge game against, like you say, Raj, probably the perfect opposition in some ways, where we know we're going to dominate the board, in a home game, and he just doesn't do anything. He doesn't offer himself. And anonymous is probably the word I'd use to describe it. And I'm really interested. I mean, we're never going to know, but I'm so interested to. I would love to know what Arteta's thinking is, because obviously, look, he's seeing him on the training pitch, and he must be impressing him on the training pitch. But we actually have multiple options that could, for that position. You could argue Jorginho, you could make it work with Jorginho and Partey in central midfield, maybe. Might be a bit defensive for a home game against Southampton. You could argue Trossard could potentially play in that position, or you could, again, you could probably find a way to accommodate Trossard if Xhaka's out. You've got Smith Rowe on the bench, and obviously that's a whole separate conversation, what's going on with Smith Rowe and why he's not getting a look in even off the bench when we need a goal in the last few weeks. So he's gone for Vieira. I would like to think on merit. And based on what he's done in his minutes so far this season, what he's doing on the training pitch, his attitude is right and everything. But when it mattered, I was really disappointed. I feel like he just sort of shied away from trying to help us, come back into the game. And I was hoping that to be honest, I was hoping it would have been a halftime sub, but he still got to play a bit of the second half. And I think, he should have really come off at half time. So man, just like really disappointed. And personally, I wouldn't be unhappy if he doesn't play again this season. I'm not saying I'm writing him off as an Arsenal player at all, because he's really young, he's new, but this is a time of the season where we need people who are going to dig in and fight, a little bit, and not ghost on us, basically. They can't hide, and that's exactly what he did the other night. So really,
and that's an important point, the ghosting thing, right? Because there's a lot of people make valid points about players coming from other countries and having their first season in the Premier League. A lot of people say, look, even the best players take a season. But here's the difference, right? If you look at, say, Darwin Núñez, he's clearly taken time and taking, present tense time to settle into the Premier League. But the effort is obviously there, right? He's obviously trying his ass off. He's running, he's doing everything that from an effort perspective he should be doing. It's just that his finishing has been poor. The timing of runs maybe is a little bit poor. There's little things, those sorts of things. This isn't that, right? Vieira is not. It's not that he is doing all those basic hygiene factors. That Aaron, do you think that? Is he just not a very good player? Has he just not got the character?
I tell you what it is that really annoys me about Vieira is over the last few games I've said to myself, every time I've seen him play, I think to myself, does he not realize we're in a title race? Like that is like that's how he plays. It's just like it's casual. there was I think he came on against West Ham when we were chasing an equaliser, and he put that free kick in, and he just like nicely floated across in the 92nd minute, and I'm just like, what are you doing? There's been a few instances like that where I can't remember. There's another game where he did something else, and the free kick he put in was absolutely awful. It might have been the Villa game.
I think it was the Villa game
before the equaliser or the winner. Sorry, but he just comes on and doesn't play with any intensity whatsoever. And what made it worse was it was very clear that Partey had an instruction. Maybe this was a tactical tweak to do it more. I know he does it sometimes, but he was very often coming deep and basically playing as a centre back to get the ball off Ramsdale, because maybe we didn't trust Holding to get the ball. But then it was even more obvious with what you were saying, Miles, is then you had Partey there, you had Holding there, you had Gabriel there, all sitting deep, facing basically the entire Southampton team, and no one was showing for the ball. And I think it didn't help in that first half, because I thought Odegaard for the first 45 didn't have a really good first half either. But our midfield looked absolutely awful. But yeah, we've seen that from Odegaard, so we know he can do it. And when you have a bad 45 minutes, and then he kind of turned it around towards the end. But I've just not seen it from Vieira. And maybe like he's had a nice assist here and there in the Europa League, but like he plays Premier League games like they're Europa League games. I think that's the issue. And I think, look, with Arteta, he's obviously an Arteta signing. We paid 30 million for him. I think Arteta is very invested in him coming good, and which is why he's giving him these minutes. But look, I think you're right. Like what you said, Raj, at the start, which is it's Southampton at home. This is a good game for me to take a gamble on Vieira. So I don't blame him for starting Vieira. But when you have the faith of the manager, you just have to take your chance in a situation like this. And he absolutely blew it. So what I really hope is Arteta doesn't keep giving him chances for the rest of the run-in unless we absolutely have to. There are enough options. Trossard came on. He did well. Smith Rowe has disappeared. We all have faith in him. Jorginho could potentially play there or a bit deeper. There are many, many options. And when you have many options, you can't just mess about like he did.
Yeah, and again, Russ's point on that, right? Jorginho, what's the point of having him if he can't start at Xhaka's place against the worst side in the league? Maybe it goes to your point, Aaron, about maybe Arteta thought Southampton at home, it's a really good. I need to, Jorginho is obviously a very conservative choice, and maybe he thought Vieira, this would be a good game for him to, really kind of continue on his upskilling in the Premier League. Anyway, we're probably going to need to address the Emile Smith Rowe enigma later on another episode, because I think that serves good time for us to talk about it. Before moving on to the City game, just covering that last sort of 10 minutes of our game, right? So we're 3-1 down. And I think, after we went 3-1 down, things actually started to look better for us. We clearly, Arteta thought, let's throw the kitchen sink at it, made lots of substitutions, attacking ones. And then from, 80 minutes onwards, I guess, it was just relentless from us, right? It was just total pressure, doing very good things with the ball. And in the end, 3-3, but we could have won. We had chances. Guys, even pulling it back to 3-3, do you think, does that give you any positives from the kind of spirit perspective? Or maybe might as well come to you for this. Or do you think that overwhelmingly the guys in that changing room will be more negatively impacted mentally than positively?
Surely negatively. They must be so annoyed at themselves for the way that what we've done in the last few games. I think you can give the Liverpool game a pass, like what happened, and that was a good point, but it was actually only really a good point if you went and won the next two games, right? But I think what happened against West Ham and what happened against Southampton, they must be so disappointed, because it's not over. And I know we're going to talk about what this means for the title and the City game on Wednesday, but it's not over. But we had such a good chance to go into that game with a much bigger, more comfortable lead. And you couldn't have really asked for much. West Ham away is not the easiest game, but it's not the most difficult either. And we generally have a good record there. and Southampton at home. You couldn't have really asked for two like better games if you're going to ask for an away game and a home game. So they must be. I think even coming back and the way that we came back, yeah, it's fantastic. And normally in most seasons, like pre-Man City and pre the Man City money, like going 10 games unbeaten, 7 wins, 3 draws, I think is our record since we lost to City. That's title winning form. So, you know, normally it wouldn't be a disaster, but it does feel like it's a bit of, not beating Southampton at home is a bit of a disaster because it's not in our hands. Well, it is in our hands, but depending on what happens on Wednesday, it's also in City's hands, and we've opened the door for them basically now. So yeah, I think they'll be really pissed off with themselves, and I think maybe that's not necessarily the worst thing in terms of from a mentality perspective, because you'd like to think this might help kind of spur them on or give them a bit of a kick up the arse to like there was a lot of talk about 2-0 up at West Ham. I think it was Carragher that said the Arsenal players were getting cocky. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case, because they surely must know there's still like 7, 8, 9 games left, whatever. But if that was the case, and if there was a bit of complacency creeping in, then hopefully this gives them sort of the kick up the arse to say, for them to realize, and for for the Arteta to say to them, look, you guys are going to have to fucking sort this shit out for the next how many games? 6 games. You can't defend like this against Man City. You can't defend like this at St James's Park. You're going to have to fix up. So who knows? Like, it might have it's obviously a negative that we haven't won, but maybe it might have a bit of a positive effect going into the last few games. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I felt like they, and kind of understandably, but also I feel like they might have had one eye on the City game. Like, do you guys think that could have been the case? Because like the way we started the game, it definitely looked like we weren't focused on Southampton. It felt like they were. I think the fans were already thinking about City. We've been thinking about the City game for weeks. I just wonder if the players were already looking at that game as like the big one, and maybe they thought Southampton would be a bit of a formality because we've been scoring goals and probably thought we could turn up and they didn't expect what they got from Southampton.
Yeah, personally, I think even if it wasn't that they were looking at the City game, I do think they were complacent. I think they maybe there's not even that much more worth elaborating on. I feel like what we did in the last 20 minutes, and I know that's facilitated by the fact that we've suddenly got all these attacking players on the pitch, fine, right? But some of the basic things that we were doing in the last 20 minutes, we could have done earlier and we didn't. Just making simpler passes quicker, just getting it forward quicker, just those things, overlapping runs, basic things like overlapping runs, we weren't really doing.
I mean,
Martinelli was killing it, right, in that in the first half. Like, fair enough, he was. But that energy that he showed in the first half, if 2 or 3 other attacking players show it, come on, mate, we're winning at halftime, regardless of the fact that we conceded 2 goals. Find Jesus didn't have a great game, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, look, I think there was complacency. I mean, do you agree, Aaron? And do you think complacency? Do you think an Ireland City game?
I think there was probably a bit of complacency at the start of the game, which was, okay, it's just Southampton. We've got enough to win this. I don't think at 2-0 down we were complacent. I think I honestly think it was a bit of a concern. It reminded me of, like, we just go through over these last three games. We've gone through periods where we just stop, like, knowing how to attack, and the attack all of a sudden looks very, very blunt. And we go back to like last season where we kind of just pass it around quite aimlessly without really doing much up front and like creating anything clinical. And that was what worried me. It's like after West Ham equalized, we were really bad. And actually there's a period between kind of 2-1 to 70, 75, 80 minutes where we just looked dead. Like, we weren't really doing anything. And you could say that's personnel. I know it's like Southampton, for example, I think they switched to a back 5, or they definitely became more defensive at halftime. And yeah, just for whatever reason, we didn't I think maybe even the game plan probably wasn't right. Like tactically, we weren't doing the right things, and then it was only like you said when we got that kind of Odegaard goal, and everyone was like, "Oh, hang on a minute, we could get something here," and then obviously the last kind of 10 minutes, especially with all the added time and the time wasting and that was going on, it turned into probably the most intense 10 minutes of football you've ever seen. I just think this team, I don't know if it's like they're bottling it or the pressure or the mentality, but there's something they're not handling. I think ever since Liverpool was the start of the run-in that sense. And I think you might have said this to me, Mize, after the game, is that we kind of stopped going game by game and we started treating it as there are 9 games left. What will we do over 9 games? And we have fans do this all the time, but I feel like that got to the players a bit. And yeah, I think sometimes we were so eager, we forced it, and we weren't even in the first half when we were 2-0 down. There were a period before we got the goal back. We were playing like it was the 92nd minute in the 10th, 15th minute of the game, and there were probably periods where we just needed to calm down a bit, and stop trying to force it, stop trying to make things happen in the 25th minute or the 55th minute when we've got time left over. And maybe that's kind of where you want your experienced heads to come in and just say, okay, guys, just chill. But actually what happened was guys like Zinchenko, guys like Jesus, they were the ones that were forcing it more than others. I thought Martinelli and Saka probably brought the most control that you've seen. And maybe that was the time to just bring on someone like Jorginho just to, hopefully add a bit more experience and just tell everyone to, just chill. Let's control the game. Let's play our football. And the fact that we do have kind of most of our first 11 on the pitch and we have better players would have shown. And maybe that's how the experience is getting to them.
Yeah, agree. And look, let's look to the City game now. Would you guys, I'm going to go to you, Aaron, first, just to continue on that little vein of form. Would you make any changes to the starting 11, whether it's bringing in some of that extra control, whether it is kind of some of the perceived frailties that we've talked about? Would you make any changes going into City? There's only a few days, between games, but still, does it warrant changes?
I'm really torn. I think it depends. What are the alternatives to the holding situation? And how do we deal with that if there are any? I think my gut tells me if there was an alternative that Arteta trusted, he would have done it by now. And that kind of says, for whatever reason, Kiwior isn't really showing that he can play at right centre back. The other options, moving Partey to right back or whatever that is, doesn't really seem to make sense to me. So yeah, I think you probably just have to play the best back four you have available, which probably includes holding. And then, then it's a question of seeing some ideas of, do we perhaps not play someone like Xhaka and play Jorginho and Partey and try and control the game a bit more and protect that back four? I actually think I'd actually refrain from doing that. And I say, actually, maybe we just go for it. And actually, maybe the only chance we have of getting something from this game is if we win it 5-4 or something like that, or 4-3, and say, yeah, look, Haaland might get 2 goals against holding, but actually we've got good enough attacking players to cause them problems, especially if Ake is out. Maybe Saka can get something against Laporte. Kyle Walker's quick, but Martinelli is as good in the form of his life at the moment. So maybe we just say, look, this is our best front five, and we have a turns into a bit of a basketball game, which is, your defense against our attack and vice versa. It's a bit risky.
But City seem to be quite good at not letting games become like that. Like, even in the games that they lose, they don't seem to be sort of chaotic type games. It feels like, actually, to beat City, you almost really do need to go for a bit of a chess game and really kind of be willing to feel a lot of pain during the game for periods, but equally have that bravery to kind of go forward and pick your moments. And I feel like whenever I think the last couple of times we played City, even when we lost them at home this time, I felt we were quite good at doing that. But I feel like, yeah, I'd worry about that approach, to be honest, Aaron. I'm not necessarily saying it's the wrong one. Your guess
I think
is
when I say
as
that
good
the
as mine
approach,
here.
the approach is play
Yeah.
our best team, right? So I'm not saying do anything drastic, but I'm saying play holding, but you're playing a midfield of Partey, Xhaka, and Odegaard. It's not. What I'm saying is like, don't be so scared of City and so worried about holding and everyone that you overcompensate and then completely kill our attack. Because if you take Xhaka out, you see what happens when you take Xhaka out, right? There's no guarantee that Jorginho comes in and does a better job than what Xhaka could have done. It is a worry. We've seen what happens when Holding's there, right? We've seen all the flaws of his game get wildly exposed. We've seen Haaland against Holding, and we've seen how that ends up. It doesn't end up well, right?
Have we seen Haaland against Holding? Oh, that was in the
FA Cup.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that wasn't pretty.
So, yeah, that's the worry. It's very tough. I think you probably said this, Raj, and maybe I'll turn the question around on you, which is, what would you do something different? But I suspect you'll say, if he was going to do something different, he should have done it on Friday.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have said. I was desperate of him to do something different on Friday night. Desperate. I really wanted him to play Kiwior and just go for that. I know managers love the left foot, right foot combinations. Ten Hag loves it. Guardiola loves it. Arteta loves it. They clearly know more about football than we do, and they're very adamant about it. They talk so specifically about the angles, and it's all about the angles, and bloody hell, so obviously it must be a massive deal to how they believe the game needs to be played. But surely sometimes you need to compromise, and surely in a situation like we've been in recently, where it's been obvious that yes, Holding's right-footed, so we get some of those angles, but there's lots of things that you can't do, and that's causing lots of other issues. Surely every now and again you just say, all right, fine, well, I'm going to have to lose out on the angles, but maybe the rest will be okay. So Kiwior, he's rapid. That seems to be his strength. He's very fast. He's a ball-playing centre-half. It could go wrong, right? He might not be great. He's certainly not going to be as good as Saliba. But what did we have to lose? But, knowing that Holding, isn't going to be great anyway. I really felt like we could have gone for that on Friday, but I don't think we can go for that on Wednesday. Now, I think we might. There's the benefit potentially of saying, all right, well, now we've had a few games with Holding, and now we've had a few games where there's been some of these issues. Maybe they know what they are and they've rectified them over the last few days. I'm being optimistic here, but I don't think you can try anything new defensively. Attacking, maybe. And maybe that's a question, Mize. Russ Morgan's got a question in the bottom again. Would you start playing Trossard from the beginning? If so, who would you drop? And Trossard has been just this brilliant player for us this season since he signed. Whether he's starting, whether he's coming off the bench, he was good. I thought, when he came on Friday as well. Would you start Trossard, mate? And who would it be for?
No. I wouldn't. Yeah. I think he deserves to be in the team. I think on merit, or not on merit. Yeah, I think based on what he's been offering us every time he's put on an Arsenal shirt, whether that's been from the start or off the bench, has been fantastic. And you could argue that he deserves a start, but then I would struggle to look at who to drop, because you can't drop Martinelli. He's absolutely on fire at the moment. You can't drop Saka. I'd say I think he's been fantastic the last few games, even despite the Southampton game. You're not going to drop Saka regardless. I don't really want to see Trossard through the middle. I think despite the chances that Jesus misses, and again, he didn't have the best game on Friday, he's still we managed to get through a period of 2 or 3 months without Jesus, but we still were desperate to get him back, and there was a reason for that. And even since coming back from injury, he started scoring goals again. I just don't feel like you can, not so much you can't drop him, but I would rather see Jesus going through the middle than Trossard personally. And then you're sort of going, then you're going back through the team, and who else are you going to drop for him? If Xhaka's not back for whatever reason, like I think he was ill on Friday, and if he's not back, then potentially you could argue he could maybe work in that number 8 position, but it's not really his best position. But yeah, it could work. But otherwise, I don't really see a space for him in the team personally. So yeah, I would go with the same kind of front 3 in Ødegaard as we have been. I think that's our best front 3.
I wouldn't be too upset if he dropped Jesus and started Trossard on Wednesday.
You were very critical of Jesus after the game on Friday.
I was just I was very frustrated
during the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have his best. It's like, look, Jesus is a quality player. Like, no one is doubting that, right? But I think we saw the trade-off, which is in these games where sometimes you don't play well and you get these half chances or these chances where you expect a top elite clinical finisher to score. He's not going to be that guy. But this is nothing new, right? And the trade-off is he's not going to put that chance in, but he's going to help create 3, 4, 5, 6 other chances for the players around him by his pressing, his tackling, his 50-50s, his duels, his assists. That it kind of makes it worth it. But yeah, that is the downside, right? And I think the question is, I really, really liked how we looked when we played Trossard up front and we played Saka and Martinelli either side of him. I thought it gets the best out of Saka, it gets the best out of Xhaka, especially, actually. But so I wouldn't be totally upset, and then I actually think bringing someone like Jesus off the bench could be awesome. The downside is, I think psychologically, this team is set up with Jesus to be like the guy, right? Like, he is our talisman. He is our big striker. He is the guy that is there to win us. Well, I think at the start of the season, he was a guy to get us top 4, but you kind of saw him as a 4 or 5 year signing to hopefully win us titles. And he is a guy
he
with
sets
the
a tone as well,
experience of
right? Yeah.
having exactly. So we lose a lot of that presence. And I think if you drop him for this game, you probably knock his confidence back quite a bit. But no, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if he starts with Trossard up front on Wednesday.
I can't see it. Oh, is it against his old club as well? I think he'll be determined to prove a point. Him and Zinchenko
That's a
will be
big call. Yeah, if he does that, you're right.
Desperate to do well. And I think with the Trossard thing, despite what I said, it's been fantastic, and I stand by that. I think we all love Trossard already. The Southampton kind of cameo performance and him hitting the bar and being, part of the reason we came back. I guess it's somewhat, I don't want to say easy, but it's easier to look great when we're 2-0 down at home and we're absolutely controlling all of the ball and we're trying to get a couple of goals back. And he's obviously going to be integral to that. So, like, do you know what I mean? Like, he's obviously going to, he helps contribute to that. But at the same time, he's highlighted in that kind of period of the game where we're desperate for a goal, and he's going to obviously be part of the, every single attack, and the ball's just consistently in Southampton's kind of defensive third. So you got kind of factor that in as well. But I would go with Jesus. I think he's still, despite the chances he misses, he's still got a goal in him, and I think that could play a massive factor. Just the fact, the motivation to do well against City and almost prove a point to Pep and to City that you guys were happy to get rid of me and replace me with Haaland down the other end, and that must be in his mind. It must be in his mind.
Do you hold?
And he's a big game player as well, I think. Yeah, sorry.
It's a good problem to have either way, right? Yeah,
it is. It is. Do you hold that same logic, Miles, for Zinchenko? Because you mentioned Zinchenko before. We've covered in the past that we think that Zinchenko, as much as he's been, outstanding, and he is an outstanding footballer, isn't necessarily our most defensively solid fullback. Does this game at City warrant something different? I mean, Charles Cherian in the comments, he is going nuclear with this, right? He's saying, why can't we go 4 centre backs in defence, holding Kiwior, Gabriel, Xhaka, stroke Partey. I mean, Xhaka's stroke Partey aren't even centre backs, but he really he doesn't even want Ben White anywhere near there, right? Like, I mean, this is nuclear. I mean, what do you think about? Does it warrant? Zinchenko maybe take a step back today. Let's get Tierney in there. What do you think?
No, personally, no. I mean, just touching on some of the points you guys made, like, I agree that if he was ever going to try something different, it had to be in the game on Friday. He obviously decided against that. I think that indicates that, assuming there's no injuries, then we go with the same back 4. So Holding plays and Zinchenko plays. And I think, again, it's kind of similar. Like, you talk Zinchenko, again, been a revelation since he joined. We've been raving about his performances, and I don't think, but we've been doing that despite knowing that, yeah, he can be a little bit vulnerable defensively, and we're going to be vulnerable down that side because he plays centrally for the majority of the game, especially when we have the ball. So we're going to get caught out. So I think that's just that's just a trade-off for the way that we're going to play. And I think you can't start changing things. Like, that's been our setup the entire season, and it's worked really well up until this point. So I think it'll be kind of mental to start, changing that now for the biggest game of the season. And the other thing, yeah, go on.
No, yeah, like, I take your point, but I guess my point, this kind of goes back to the point I made earlier, which is, like, we put in Holding, and when you put Holding in the system doesn't work, right? We had this really good system, which was, this is when you've got 2 fast, pacey centre backs with good recovery pace, who can, tackle and push up high. This works, right? The minute you stop doing that, this system isn't a good system anymore. It's a system that's consistently conceding goals, even with good centre backs. And now we're conceding even more goals because one of our centre backs is even worse. So actually, like, like, we talk about Pep's system of playing the 3 centre backs plus Stones in what looks like midfield sometimes. Like, I don't think people give Pep enough credit for, like, how he's just subtly dropped that into the way City play, because at the start of the season they weren't secure, right? They couldn't really figure out how to make Haaland and De Bruyne work, and
they were persistent with that, with the Rico Lewis thing as well, weren't they? They were doing all that,
and Pep was like, this just isn't working. I need to get the best out of Haaland, and I need to stop conceding goals. And he's dropped this, like, ridiculous system of playing 3 defenders, no real fullbacks, playing another centre back in midfield, and it seems to be working for them. Yeah,
it's a bit easier to do that when you've got Man City's roster.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, that's kind of what you want a top manager to do, which is, these are the players I've got. How do I win the game? And it's not always just, I'm going to play Holding and hope that it works out. I'm going to play Tierney and make him do the Zinchenko thing when he can't do the Zinchenko thing. Why doesn't he find a system that gets the best out of Tierney, or, like, says, I'm going to protect Holding? And I know he's trying that, but I don't think he's nailed the kind of system when we have some players out. And I think
Miles' point is fair, though, isn't it? Because when you've got the best ingredients, you can do all kinds of things, and maybe that's the issue. Maybe Arteta's got 100 solutions.
Yeah, we have seen it with other teams. Like, you look at what happened with Liverpool when they lost Van Dijk, right? The whole system crumbled. Even for a while, without Mane, until very, very recently, it looked like they just couldn't get going for the first 4 or 5 months of the season. But I think when you are, unfortunately, competing with the best, like one of the best managers of all time, who has unlimited money and 50 million pound centre backs, yeah, they can do that. But that, unfortunately, is the bar.
So are you? And if we're, so you go on. Sorry to interrupt. Go on.
No, I guess I'm just saying, like, the fact that we haven't really tried anything else except maybe subtle tweaks to our system is I think there's two things, right? It's A, like Arteta is probably thinking what you guys are saying is we've got the system that works. It gets the best out of our front 4-5. I'm going to stick with it and I hope the defense can last. But perhaps there's another world where he finds another way of winning.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think that's actually Charles's original comment. Now, kind of reading through some of his clarifying points, I think was sort of what he was perhaps alluding to, something similar to what City are doing in the whole, not necessarily playing without a fullback system and having that, 3 centre backs and but in that kind of ball playing 3-1 sort of thing. But Russ also makes his other good point, right, about we've talked about this before on this episode, but Tomiyasu's injury has been arguably as bad for us as Saliba's injury because of the knock on, right? It's But anyway, guys, let's just, how do you think the game's actually going to go? Let's just think about the repercussions. So where are we at the moment? Arsenal played 32 games, we're on 75 points. Man City have played 30 games and are on 70 points. So that's 5 points gap, but 2 games in hand, Man City have. Now look, if Man City beat Arsenal, then that goes down to 73. That's 73 points Man City will have. So that's a gap of 2, and City will have 2 games in hand. If it's a draw, then that 5-point gap is maintained, but City still have 2 games in hand. And obviously, if Arsenal win, then it's an 8-point gap, but with City having 2 games in hand. So it's one of these things. Arsenal win, then it's very much it's Arsenal. Arsenal are still in the box seat. It's Arsenal's to lose. If Arsenal draw, then it's no longer in our hands, but it's still that 5-point gap. So Man City still have to be perfect, right? Or they still have to win those 2 games in hand, and they have to match Arsenal's other results. But a loss is just it's quite hard to try and get hope. With all that context, guys, what do you think? Are Arsenal going to get a result on Wednesday? Mize?
I really, honestly, mate, I can see us, imagine we defend the way we've been defending the last few weeks. You could see us getting trounced by God knows how many goals. And you can almost picture the Rob Holding kind of, I don't want to pick on him, but the kind of what we saw in the FA Cup game. Haaland just absolutely bullied him. And I think we were a bit lucky that it didn't lead to worse on that night, and we didn't really care because it was the cup. So I'm scared. I'm genuinely scared for what could potentially happen if we defend the way we've been defending, and it's mistakes, it's errors that is the worry. That's what's crept into our game, and we're making so many of them. We can't afford to make any, pretty much, on Wednesday. I mean, look, just one thing I wanted to say before I kind of give my prediction was, I agree with Aaron, and where we can't. I don't think we can turn up to this game and try and just defend and try and go ultra defensive basically, and hold on to a draw or try and nick a goal. I just don't think that this defense are going to be able to do that. I'm not saying that we should just go or kind of go gung-ho and try and outscore them, but I think if you watch I don't know if you guys watched the Bayern Munich ties, but that first leg, Bayern Munich had they had loads of chances. They should have scored a couple of goals, and the way that they were creating chances was they were actually winning the ball back in transition really quickly, kind of fairly high up the pitch, and then letting the likes of Sane, Musiala to kind of go and do damage. And they were probably a little bit unlucky to not get a couple of goals. And I guess if you think about the way that we play, if Partey has a really good game, if Zinchenko in the middle has a really good game, if Ben White has a really good game, and these guys can, again, transition the ball, and then we just get it forward and let Saka, Jesus, Martinelli, Odegaard do the damage they've been doing all season, then I can see us scoring goals. I can see us actually causing City loads of problems. And I think that's how we've got to approach the game. We've got to look at what Bayern did. I know that they lost the game. I think they lost the first leg 3-0 or something like that. But, like I say, City were vulnerable. Edison saved them a number of times. So I'm kind of hoping that that's how we approach the game. And like Aaron said, we can't go into it being scared of them. We can't go into this game. I think if we have that approach and we shit ourselves and we start, making mistakes and stuff, then I don't hold much hope for us because we know City are going to get chances. We know Haaland's going to get, if Haaland's, if he starts getting chances in the box, he's going to get a couple of goals at least. And we've got to try and prevent that. And I think the best way of preventing that is us trying to cause City problems and do damage down their end, if that makes sense. So I have a tinge of hope. I have a tiny bit of hope that we can get a good result. But I'm also really scared of what could happen. So I'm going to sit on the fence and go for a draw. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. Another 2-2 draw.
Aaron?
So yeah, I think Maya says we can't be scared, but I'm absolutely terrified, mate. Honestly, I cannot see anything but City comfortably beating us, unfortunately. I've never been more pessimistic going into a game. It's because
really you've never been more pessimistic.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say
no, but honestly, like, okay, in recent times where I was very. Okay, maybe exaggerating a bit, but yeah, I think I've never been more pessimistic.
We are still
good,
good,
this
right?
season.
Like we're still like top of the. We're not like some.
No, I think, you know what it is? It's like it sounds nonsense, but it is purely Rob Holding. Like I don't want to sound like I'm going in on this guy.
So hard,
but like I have seen Rob Holding. No, but I've seen Rob Holding. You know what it goes back to is like every time we're like, let's not be scared, let's not do dumb things, let's concentrate and play your game. Rob Holding doesn't do that. Right, I remember Spurs away. Okay, we were like, let's not be scared of Son. Let's not be scared of Kane. What does he go and do? He goes and panics and gets sent off against Son. Game's over. Against Haaland in the FA Cup, we're like, big striker. Don't be scared of Haaland. Don't wind him up. Don't get caught. And don't fall for his tricks. What does he do? He falls for his tricks and does something dumb. And I think he gets booked, certainly. And then I think he lets Haaland through. Well, I can't remember what happened. Maybe he didn't play that badly in terms of the way he led to a goal. Maybe he even got taken off at half time. I can't remember. But I just don't rate this guy in big games. And when you play City, you need everyone to turn up. And you need to be perfect because unfortunately you're competing against a super team who have unlimited money and one of the best tactical managers in the world, right? And I think the only way we come out of their minds is alive is if we, like you said, go for it and we can get like a 2-2 or 3-3 draw or something like that. But I find that the only glimmer of hope is if Ake's out. I think he's been holding that defense together a bit, and maybe Saka can get at Laporte. I've even seen a few City fans being like really worried that Laporte's playing. I'm like, that's ridiculous. But no, honestly, I think it will be 4-1 City or something like that.
Whoa, bloody hell!
I mean, it's one of those things.
If we get a 0-0 or we get a 1-1,
we're not getting a 0-0. It's not happening.
If we come away with that place for a draw, I would be absolutely delighted.
So I don't know, man. Like I think, like I thought I was pretty harsh without my prediction because like I said, I'm shitting myself that it could be that kind of scoreline, but I'm kind of hoping that we've learned a little bit from these last few weeks, right? The good thing about going through what we've gone through is like, as in, the leading at Anfield, leading at London Stadium 2-0, coming back, and what's happening at Southampton. I think they must have learned quite a few lessons from that. And I think
I just think we've got a defender that doesn't learn lessons. I'm sorry, like he's awful.
Yeah, because it's not a mentality thing with him, is it? It's a quality thing.
Yeah, he's not good enough.
Yeah, but mate, he's not the reason. I mean, look, you can always pin it back to say, okay, if Saliba's playing, then this happens, that happens, fine. But he's not the reason that Ramsdale, even if, like you said, for the first goal, Ramsdale makes a mistake. He's not passed to Zinchenko because Rob Holding's telling him to.
No,
he's made a mistake because he's, again, probably pressure or nerves or whatever. Gabriel giving away a penalty because Partey gives the ball away against West Ham. That's nothing to do. I mean, it's nothing to. Yeah, of course, he's going to obviously have a contributing factor to every defensive error because
isn't this the issue, Miles? Like, so isn't it like because we've analysed the last few games, and I think we've analysed quite consistently that even though there's pretty much not one goal that you can directly say was Holding's fault, there's pretty much not one goal that you could do that. But I think when we've analysed the last few games, we've thought that there's plenty of reasons to suggest that we are playing differently. Other players are having to do different things because of holding.
Yeah,
and
but
this is what it
even
is.
so, you should still beat Southampton at home, right? I know we kind of
yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
of course. But I'm saying with City, isn't that a really big concern?
Mate, of course. Don't get me wrong, right? The difference between having Saliba going into this game and Rob Holding is of course, that is one of the biggest worries. And we saw, like we just said, the FA Cup game. There was a couple of times where Rob Holding went quite up the pitch. Haaland was basically in behind and Holding just had to bring him down. And if that happens a couple of times, he's going to get sent off. He's going to give away penalties, whatever. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible. But I'm kind of hoping that
that's what I think is going to happen.
They learn. If it happens, then it happens. And, okay, right. You guys are right. Or I don't know, Raj, if you have the same view. But I'm kind of hoping
we're going to win.
That they're going to... Oh, okay. Well, let's move on to that then. Bloody hell. Okay.
I would love some of whatever you're having, mate. Please send it my way.
No, because
Go for it, Raj.
Do you know how you made a really good point before, Aaron, early on in this episode, where you said that? Well, I think you said that I said it to you, which was around the whole we stopped taking things game by game. Yeah, that's a really astute comment because I think that's absolutely true. So I think that if you could even hear it in interviews when we were winning games. And when we were prior to the Liverpool game, everyone still thought City were going to win the title. And everyone was like, all right, well, this is amazing what Arsenal are doing. And I kept on asking them questions around, can you do it, whatever. And it was always really, Arsenal, all the players, they looked laser focused when they were just like, we're just the next game. I thought, we're just thinking about the next game. Not thinking about the time, just thinking about the next game. And actually, that's changed now, I've noticed, because over the last few games, firstly, even pre-Liverpool, people started talking even the pundits, Keane, Neville, whatever. They started being a bit more like, oh, Arsenal could actually do this. I think Arsenal could win this thing. And loads of other commentators and pundits have been, and a lot of the media have been like, well, Arsenal actually. I think something's changed. And I think the players mentally have been affected by that. And when you hear some of the interviews, they haven't been talking about going game by game. They've been talking about, we really want to finish and do something amazing this season. We really want to kind of do that. It's like they're thinking about it. And I completely agree, therefore, with what you guys said. I think they've started looking at it as a run-in, which has completely screwed them over. But I think that what we might benefit from is now, after the last few games, people aren't saying that anymore. After the last few games, the narrative is, we've bottled it. It's done, basically. The narrative is very much that if they can't beat Southampton at home, if they're going to put two all draws after being 2-0 up, it's not happening. And City, they're being imperious. They've won all their games recently. They're City. They've battered Bayern. Whatever. They're brilliant, and we're away to them. Rob Holding this, that, no chance. I genuinely think our players are going to go there with a certain sense of, well, what the hell? No one thinks we're going to win here. Everyone seems to think we've bottled it. Maybe we have. And I think they won't have that. They won't freeze. So it's not going to be this very, very nervy game. And I think they'll know that if we lose, we're toast. If we draw, it's still alive. And if we win, that's an amazing positive. It's a huge, huge positive. It's like a true 6-pointer in that respect, right? So I think they'll go out there and I think they'll really, really go for it. I think they will really go for it. And I think as a result of that, I think we could see a game where it's a real thriller. I think it could be properly end to end. I think that we will, we won't be nervous in possession. I think even when defending, technically it might happen. So I think, your point, Aaron, and, I think technically speaking, just purely on the fact that they have excellent players and Holding and whatever, and, the system isn't looking fantastic, it might lead to City scoring, but I don't think it will be because of nerves. I think that'll be a quality thing. So actually, I'm looking at this a little bit more positively. I'm remembering the Chelsea away game last season where when we went to that and we had lost 3 games on the bounce leading up to that, Palace, Brighton, and Southampton, we had lost leading up to that game. And that point, Chelsea are European champions, yeah, still at that point. It's a big away game. And, we played with completely different Arsenal. We were really good that day and won. So I'm going for a win. But I could very easily see the things that you guys have said happening. I can see us, losing 4-1 is a possibility as well. But I'm actually, man, I think we'll do it. But you know what? I'm really worried about. I'm worried that even if we do win, it will be kind of all in vain. I feel like there are more games to come. Like, we go away to St James's Park and at home to Brighton, things like that. Where
if we win on Wednesday and we still don't win the league, I know it's not done. There's some very hard games, but City have got some tough games as well. If we don't win after winning on Wednesday, that is I don't like using the term. That is a bottle. That is a bottle.
But no, it's not.
But say if you let's rewind. Let's rewind.
Yeah.
If you go pre Liverpool, if you think about it, pre Liverpool, right, when we were trying to predict how things were going at that point and how things would go, I don't think any of us at that point were like, yeah, I think Arsenal are going to win the league. And a lot of us weren't sure about whether we'd beat Liverpool, but we were all sure we'd beat West Ham, and we were all sure that we would beat Southampton. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we've not done those things. Like, so, we didn't win any of those games. So on that basis, right, like, we should be fundamentally less confident than we were then, right? So I don't think that even beating City surely should put us in a situation where.
But it's a 6-pointer, like you said, mate. Like, it is the 6-pointer. So yeah, I agree. At this moment in time, completely agree with you, right? But if we then go and beat City, that's what would we be? 8 points clear?
Yeah,
right. They have 2 games in hand, so they've got to play 2 more games. And then, I mean, it's just a case of we have to. I don't know how many games we'd actually have to win the league, but even with the trips, like St James's Park, for example, is a tough away game. I don't know, man. Like, I don't think you could look at those fixtures when you're in that position with 5 games to go and you don't then go and win the league. That's nothing more. There's nothing else. I think that is a complete bottle, to be honest. As in, what? So what would it take for us to not win the league with 5 games to go? 3 of them at home, I think. Chelsea, Brighton, Wolves.
Yeah, but like.
And Wolves,
fine, but we could beat City. So what would be 8 points with 2 games in hand, right?
Yeah.
So we could win 4, whatever it is, draw to Newcastle, and not win the league.
Yeah,
and I think we'd probably lose it on goal difference.
Okay, fine.
That's not a bottle job, mate. That's just drawing away to Newcastle and winning. If we went and lost every other game, that's nonsense, right? But if we could easily draw to Brighton, draw to Newcastle, beat Chelsea, beat Wolves, beat Forest. Is that a bottle job?
Okay, when you put it like that, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I didn't do the maths.
But the thing is, right? If City then if City draw another 2 games, and then we draw another 4 games and still draw, that's a bottle job. I agree.
I guess I'm not envisioning a situation where City win all. Okay, apart from our game. What would that be? 7 other games I've got to play. They've got 8 games left, right, including ours. So I personally don't think they win. I don't think they get 21 points out of 21. So that's where I'm saying I think that means that we would have dropped more than a couple of points at, say, Newcastle away. It probably means we've dropped points in like the Chelsea game or the Brighton game, for example, and that it's all ifs, buts, and maybes. But
my main conclusion is this is a team that wasn't built for a title challenge this season. So I don't think anything they do between now and the end of the season is. I mean, unless there are some extremes, and to be fair, drawing 3 of our last games is probably on the more extreme side of these things. But I don't think there's anything you can do to be like this is a bottle job when you're up against this City team that. Unless the City team start dropping points all over as well. This is a team that could get more points than the Invincibles. This is like a phenomenal team that I don't think you can say have... I mean, the word bottling it is interesting. Like, is it the fact that the pressure got to you and you don't have the experience and you don't have the players and you have a few injuries? Is that bottling it? I don't know. But...
but it is a very emotive word, isn't it? Because you could say, is it fair to use the word bottling because of
if we have a few more of the Southampton performances, then I think that is bottling it. Like if we went 3-0 behind to Wolves and came back to win 3-3 and went 2-0 behind down to Forest or lost to Forest, then I think you have to start questioning some of these players. But if we don't win it because we didn't beat Newcastle away or we didn't beat Chelsea at home or Brighton at home, maybe Chelsea is different, but Brighton, who are a very good team, they're just tough games.
City have got them as well, but
we're just not City. That's the thing. That's the
no,
reason
we're not City.
want
But I
them
think
not
if you're
to
able to go, if you're able to go and beat City, and then it's finishing line is in sight, the confidence that must then give you, knowing that you're 8 points clear. City have got to then go and they're hoping that we're dropping points. Basically, I don't know. I feel like then, yes, St James's Park is going to be a very, very tough game. But the others, even Brighton at home, I know that's going to be a very tough game as well. But that's not. It's not the worst. It's not the worst run. Like they've still got to go to Brighton. They've got to go to Goodison Park, for example. They've got some tough games as well. I think they've got to go to Brentford. And yes, it's City, but I think when you're that close to winning a title and you've just gone to, we're lauding City at the moment, right? We're talking about how unbelievable they are in terms of on the pitch and the players they've got and the manager they've got. If we go there and beat them, then I don't know. I think if you then don't go and win the league with such a small number of games to go, despite the injuries, whatever, if it's because City win 7 games, then fine. Yeah, of course, that's not a bottle because we have to be perfect as well, pretty much. But if it means we've dropped points in multiple games in those last 5, I don't know. I feel like that I'd be really disappointed if that happens. You guys would be as well, right? Like, as in more than disappointed, you'd be pissed off if you if we get ourselves into that position where we beat City and we're 8 points clear, even if that gets cut to 2 after a few more games, and we still don't win the league. I don't know. I'd personally, right now, I'm kind of not massively optimistic about Wednesday anyway. So it is whatever happens on Wednesday happens. I don't personally think we'll win, but if we do go and win, like Raj, you reckon we will, and then we still don't win the league? I don't know. I just feel like that's such a missed opportunity.
I think I'd agree with you but it depends on how that rest of that period pans out. I think that goes to Aaron's point. Like I'll be really upset, but not angry at the Arsenal team if we go on and win 4 of those last 5 games. Fine, we draw or lose to Newcastle or whatever. Let's say that happens. It'll be really disappointing, but I probably wouldn't feel like we bottled it. I probably would rue the drop points recently against Southampton and and West Ham, etc. But anyway, look, we've been chatting for a while. I suppose just a one concluding point on fixtures that I wanted to add, because I was having a look at Man City's fixtures, and it's quite interesting because you've got some of the teams that they're playing, which, see, even now away at Brentford on the last day of the season, before I was thinking that's going to be really tough. But the thing is, the way it's looking table wise, because Brentford have dropped off, Brentford probably won't have anything to play for. Like there's a chance they won't have even the possibility of finishing in the Conference League. So that's a bit annoying. But I feel like there's this little period where City play. So look, after us, they've got Fulham. Fulham have nothing to play for. I don't think they can kind of finish top 7, for example. West Ham are safe now, which is annoying, right? So I think at home to West Ham, but then they've got Leeds and Everton back to back. And Leeds are pathetic, but that at that point, it's like Southampton coming to us. Southampton, it's their livelihoods at this point for those players. A point could mean staying up, right? So playing those games in between these Champions League games, it just maybe. And then Chelsea, they've got afterwards. And I know Chelsea have got nothing to play for, but they've also kind of got a situation where I think some of their players are probably worried about what next season could look like for them. And, given such a big squad, I think there'll be players who might put in a shift to it and think playing well against Man City puts them in the, either the shop window or kind of favorably in whoever the next manager for Chelsea's eyes is. And then Brighton, obviously, it's going to be, a tough game for Man City. So, yeah, look, man, I think there's going to be lots of very interesting things going on from now until the end of the season.
Yeah, as long as we don't lose, then we're right in it. I think if we lose, then we're relying on a few favours and us to be perfect, and that's where it gets tricky. So I know I said I would lose. I think I said we'd get battered 4-1. To try and be positive. If we play like we did for the first 35 minutes at Anfield, if we play like we did for the first 20 minutes at Upton Park, at the London Stadium, if we play like we did in the last 15 minutes against Southampton, we will do damage against Man City. Like we saw even the first half against Man City when they came to us, we will do damage. And yeah, look, we have a bit of a liability at the back, but we do have the players who can cover for him. And if we do have the other 10 of our best 11, and they all step up and compensate, and we keep the ball away from where they could affect it, then we have a chance.
They Man City defenders, they must be as great as they are. Saka and Martinelli are two players that you don't want to face them. If you're a fullback, any fullback in the world, you don't want to be facing an informed Martinelli and a Saka who's just been unreal this season. So that's probably the biggest positive. If we can, like I said before, win the ball and get the ball to them quickly, they can be devastating. And we just got to hope that that's what happens and we get a bit of luck down the other end. So, Raj, what was your score prediction?
To have the game of their life, basically.
Yeah.
My score prediction is 3-2 to Arsenal.
Oh, imagine that. Bloody hell, mate. I think I'll cry if we win 3-2, man.
I'll cry if we draw.
Look, guys, 1.5 hours. I think we could probably talk for another hour on this. So firstly, thank you both. It felt like a 5-person podcast today. So I really want to thank Charles and Russ in the comments because they've basically been
thank you very much.
Conversing throughout this whole pod with us, which has made it really fun for us. So really appreciate it, Charles, Russ. Wow. We've been saying at every pod that we do actually that, the next pod could be very interesting. But this truly is the biggest game of the season coming up. It really is. It is huge. We've not had a title 6-pointer like this for, I don't know what, 10 years? I don't know. It's crazy, isn't it? So listen, everyone who's been listening, thank you for your support. And everyone, please like, share, subscribe. Really appreciate it. Again, thank you, Charles and Ross, and thanks, Mize. And then come on, Arsenal, let's do it at City. Let's go for it.
Fingers crossed, eh?
Yeah. Good night.
See you later, guys.